This is the Resolute Podcast, where we are discipling and developing men to live with conviction. I am Vince Miller, your host, and today we are discussing the case for Easter. So men, welcome back to the program. If this is your first time tuning in, then thanks for joining us. The Resolute Podcast is produced multiple times every week. We have Resolute study guides that go along with this podcast for your men's group found on the website for members at beresolute.org. Come back often. Feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or in iTunes. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. All the links are on the website, so let's dive in. Recently, guys, I had the opportunity to hear Lee Strobel speak, author of the classic book Case for Christ. If you haven't read it, you need to pick it up. He told the very personal and moving story of his conversion to faith. He was formerly a self-absorbed skeptic, as he says, who was a cynic of all things spiritual, and he was at one time the former editor at the Chicago Tribune. As a serious skeptic of the faith in those days, he watched one day as his wife made a profession of faith, and in response to her decision, he set out to disprove the decision that she had made by presenting evidence against the myth of Jesus Christ. He just sounded like a wonderful person to live with. So as a reporter, he focused his task on researching the evidence that really focused on a single linchpin of the Christian faith. And of course, this is the resurrection of Jesus Christ. He understood, as many do, that the pivotal point of Christianity lies not in the life nor the death of Jesus Christ, but solely in his resurrection. And he believed that if he could reasonably disprove this, he would be able to disprove Christianity and perhaps sway his wife back to a reasonable way of life. Of course, as many of us do know the end of the story, not only did he come to discover the overwhelming facts behind the resurrection, but he also came to discover that he himself must answer the most important question he would ever answer. Given the evidence, what do you, Lee Strobel, do with Jesus Christ? What Strobel failed to recognize and realize is that many before him have followed the evidence trail in the same way, and they too have come to the same conclusion, that Jesus Christ lived, died, and was resurrected from death. And we know this attempt to disprove the resurrection led to his own profession of faith and to a major transformation in the life of his family. So after many years of study, Strobel has reduced the case for Christ, or as I'm saying today, the case for Easter, down to 4 convincing points. Now, as I was listening, I thought his points were simple and logical and great for any young apologist that wants to explain the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ. He presented 4 evidences that begin with the letter E, which makes them very easy to remember. So here are his 4 evidences. Evidence 1, execution. So, as we know, you have to have death before you can have a resurrection. I know, shocking truth, right? But Strobel made the point that in regard to the death of Jesus Christ, we have tons of evidence about his execution. We have evidence not only within the Bible about his death, but this is also testified by numerous outside ancient sources. Notable extra-biblical historians like Josephus and Tacitus write about the execution of Jesus Christ. We have descriptions of the death of Jesus also in the Talmud, which is the central text of rabbinic Judaism, who are devoted followers of God who do not believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ. And as a punctuation point, Even renowned atheists like Gerd Ludemann agree that the evidence about the fact that Jesus Christ died by crucifixion is unanimous. So we have this mound of evidence for the execution, and that was his first conclusion. Evidence 2, early accounts. Next, Strobel noted that there are numerous early accounts that prove that the resurrection is not simply a legend. Strobel said that the sheer volume of early accounts decimate, he used the word decimate, the claim that the resurrection was a lie or that his followers were lunatics. He points to the early Christian creed as significant public evidence that cannot be ignored. Just like we corroborate with witnesses to an event, we cannot ignore the incredible volume of early accounts. He stated that early accounts include opponents of the faith who testify to Jesus Christ, perhaps the most formidable, listen carefully, being Saul of Tarsus, who was not only a verbal opponent as a devout Jew and Roman, but that he murdered Jews for their profession of faith in Jesus Christ. Roman, Jews, and Christ followers knew him as one of the most vindictive opponents of faith, of course, until he witnessed the resurrection of Jesus Christ for himself on the road to Damascus. Why else would a man of this high standing, notoriety, wealth, and education leave his life of ease to follow the faith of what some call common and unintelligible people? Saul of Tarsus became Paul the Apostle, and this man, who was one of the greatest opponents of Jesus Christ, became one of the most formidable proponents of the faith. Strobel specifically pointed out to us the obvious, which is, why would Saul make this change unless, of course, this was true? And to further substantiate this point, Strobel pointed out that most of these early accounts arise between the first 6 years, around the first 6 years of the resurrection, which is further proof that this was not a later manufactured legend, but an event that was witnessed by real people. Strobel called this, as a professional editor, note this, historical gold. He also added that sometimes this is known to happen within 2 generations, but never months, of course, unless it's true. Evidence 3, empty tomb. Strobel's next point is that what we have on Easter morning is an empty tomb. It is sealed and guarded, yet found empty. He notes that even the enemies of Jesus attest to the fact that the tomb was empty. The real question is, how did it become empty? And keep in mind, both Roman officials and Jewish officials would want to ensure that it was always guarded and occupied. He also stated that the disciples did not have the motive, means, or opportunity. They did not have MMO, and most of them were scared that something was going to happen to them, so they hid themselves. So the big issue is that the tomb is empty, and no one would want it otherwise, nor have the means to do this. That's the obvious conclusion, right? Guys, this is serious evidence. So the question will always remain. So our questions will always remain because it was empty, and therefore we have to wrestle with never finding evidence in an empty tomb, which is exactly what those who want to disprove Christianity desperately want and need. They need a body which was never found. Gentlemen, never, ever, ever found, right? Evidence 4, eyewitnesses. In the end, Jesus appears in resurrected form on more than a dozen occasions to over 515 people. I mean, this is amazing stuff. He ate with, walked with, and talked with all of these people, right? Strobel stated we have about 9 sources of eyewitness proof from inside and outside the Bible. In addition to this, he said that 7 sources outside of the Bible accent the fact that disciples lived in deprivation and suffering because they had witnessed and pronounced this belief. And why? Well, because, gentlemen, they believed what they had seen. And these eyewitnesses are incredible proof. And remember, do not be so quick to disprove these eyewitnesses, because if you do, you will also disprove all of history, which is corroborated by the same methodology even today. The way we determine history is true is by eyewitnesses. That's how we determine history. We determine it by what people have seen, and while we want to discount these 515 witnesses, if we choose to do that, we have to play by those same rules in all the rest of history. Gentlemen, to say that these 515 witnesses didn't live means to say that the people who witnessed Martin Luther King Jr. alive, even though you never saw him, means to discount them. Means to discount the fact that he lived. We know that he lived by the eyewitnesses, by the pictures, by the testimonies of other people. Therefore, we have to believe that Jesus Christ not only lived, died, but rose again. So the big question then becomes, what will you do with these 4 evidences? I think the question that Lee Strobel was forced to answer is the same that we all must face. It is the greatest question of all time. If Jesus was in fact raised from the dead, what will you do with the culpable knowledge that you now possess? Or in more pastoral language, what will you do with Jesus Christ? What will you do with Jesus Christ? Strobel's response was to kneel privately and quietly on his bedroom floor after 2 years of searching for evidence against the resurrection, and he gave his will and life to Jesus Christ. What is interesting is that we will answer this question too. We can choose to answer it now or answer it later. But men, we will all answer this question. And as we wrestle through the story of Easter, we either choose to believe or choose to disbelieve. It is a choice we all have to make, but a choice with eternal consequence. Well, gentlemen, that's the show. Thanks for listening. Guys, as always, I want to encourage you to find a couple of other men to join with you. Listening on your own is great, but doing this, listening with a couple of other men, is even better. I want to strongly recommend our newest book entitled Convictions. It's designed to help you move from being convicted to living with conviction in your life with 4 factors that I believe will alter how you live the Christian life. It comes with 4 small group videos for discussion at the end of each chapter for you to use with other men that you know. Just head to the website to purchase the book. So guys, get off the bench and get into the game. If you have any questions or comments today, please email me at info@beresolute.org. And until next time, remember, I love you guys. Have a great Easter. And as always, remember, be, live, and act resolute.